Alright, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to 𝐤𝐿𝐼𝐴, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Salutations to you, Akim, out there, sincerely doing the work of the hopeful elect. My name is 𝐤𝐿𝐼𝐴, back with another lesson, Lord willing, to edify the elect of the nation of Israel. This is going to be a question. This is going to be pretty much a video about a question that was asked on the comment board by 𝐤𝐿𝐼𝐴 is coming back. All right, someone asked him a question, and the question right here, as you see, is from Hope for the Elect of the 12 Tribes. And his question was, quick random question that's been dwelling on my spirit. I have dreads, but never let them go. Never let them get long, because I don't believe, it says me, but I know he's talking about men. It says, I don't believe men shall have long hair. Should I cut them off altogether, or just remain to keep them short? If there are any elders out there in GMS that have info to give the water. It says the water, but it's the water. Alright, so, Lord willing, through the spirit of 𝐤𝐿𝐼𝐴, I want to, answer this question, all through the spirit of 𝐤𝐿𝐼𝐴, and not to make this too long and drawn out. But basically, for the simple fact that, this brother is asking, for the simple fact that is dwelling on your spirit, it's your spirit groaning against your flesh, or your flesh groaning against your spirit. So your spirit is telling you, to do something. And pretty much what your spirit is telling you to do is to cut your dreads. All right, because, through the spirit and through this lesson, I want to basically get into the, the origin of dreads. Well, a little bit of the origin of dread, or the belief and the whole system behind it. And, to bring out some scriptures, Lord willing, to edify the elect of the nation of Israel again. But, should he cut him off? Well, I'm gonna give you a little testimony, about myself. All right, for what? But since I was born, I was raised up as a so-called Rasta. My father was a Rasta. My mom's did what he did. So basically, from the time I was born, I had dreads. All right, or from the time that I was able to, acquire long enough, thick enough hair to turn it into dreadlocks, my parents dreaded me up. All right, so from the time I was a child growing up, all the way up until I was 16 years old, I had dreads. I had dreadlocks down to my damn ass, man. I had long hair. All right, and that was from, from the age of a young child, almost pretty much from birth till I was 16 years old. And then Spirit had it where 2 years prior to waking up to the truth, I cut my dreads at 16. All right, I cut my dreads at 16 years old, and it was a relief. It was a relief because back when I had dreads, it wasn't a fashion statement. It was more like a so-called cultural, religious type of, aspect of having dreads. So growing up, around that time, it wasn't a fashion statement. Going to school, kids would always talk, rag on you and tease you and blah, 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 calling all types of names, mop head, Brillo head, and all these other stupid shit, man. So today, it's always been in my spirit to cut it. It's always been in my spirit to cut it, man. Since I was old enough to realize that having dreads wasn't right. Like this is not cool. It's always been in my spirit to cut it. But then, I finally grew enough, courage. Despite what my father would have thought, or my mom's or whatever. But mainly my father. That's what really helped me back. What he would have thought about it. But Spirit had it where I just got rid of my dreads. I just totally, one day, few days, took him about a couple, days to realize I didn't have dreads no more, because I still had hair in my head, which I'm gonna get into that too. I still had hair in my head, but, I used to walk around the house with my head covered up, with like a t-shirt, whatever the case is. And then he finally realized that I cut it, and, he was kind of messed up about it. But nevertheless, that was the spirit of 𝐤𝐿𝐼𝐴 preparing me to come into this truth. So that was one step closer, putting away an old man even before I came into the truth, which I give all praises to 𝐤𝐿𝐼𝐴 for that. All right, but I'm gonna read question again, and I'm gonna just get into some reading. It says, quick random question that's been dwelling on my spirit. I have dreads, but never let them get long, because I don't believe men should have long hair. Should I cut them off altogether, or just remain to keep them short? If there's any elders out there in GMS that have info, the water, give the water. And my personal, my spirit say you should just cut it. All right, to be honest with you, you should just cut it, because in this year and these time and age, it's just a fashion statement, man. You know, it's a fashion statement, and it's even more vain to have dreads than to go to a barber or just get your own clippers and cut it yourself. Having dreads is even more vain. All right, now let me just go through some things that I pulled up. You know, these are just some images of dreadlocks, right? But I want to read this first. It says the fascinating history of dreadlocks, which the things that I've read, a lot of, sources said, the history of dreads is pretty much unclear. So 𝐤𝐿𝐼 willing, if the Spirit allowed me to actually come across, solid foundation, historical, evidence and, of the actual origin of it, I'm gonna do another quick, lesson, Lord willing. All right, but I'm not gonna read all of this. I want to just jump to the point. It's titled 2500 BCE. All right, it says people from different faiths look at their hair to be holy and as a form of strength and power. Says Slater, to not comb your hair to some is a disregard of vanity and things of this world. But it's more than just a dismissal of the physical world. It's a Rastafarian belief that knotted hair prevents energy from escaping through the top of the head and hair, allowing it to remain in the body and aid in the strength of mind, body, and spirit. Now this is all mythological beliefs, all right, and it became more popular in these modern day times with the Rastafarians, all right, or the so-called Rasta people, all right, mainly them Benjamites over there in Jamaica, and throughout the whole West Indies, starting going back to the 60s and 70s and all that. They really made that popular. And during that time to have dreads was a form of rebellion, all right? Because again, my pops, when he had dreads, when he still have them, it's probably down to his foot right now. But when he had dreads, or when he was younger, it was a form of rebellion during his time. A lot of people didn't like them. They thought Rastas was like the rebels of, the cities and all that stuff. But what it is it's a belief that your hair. All right, this image right here is Shiva, which is a Hindu god. All right, and Shiva actually had dreads, and even going way back, going centuries back, the Indians, all right, or the so-called Hindus over there in the East, they used to grow their hair long, and I got some images I'm gonna pull up because it goes back, a form of it, I should say, goes back to this god or this deity, all right, Shiva, which is to It says, but is more than just a dismissal of a physical world. Is a Rastafarian belief that having knotted hair prevents energy from escaping through the top of the head and hair, allowing it to remain in the body. That's all madness, man. All right, that's all madness. That's all disbelief in 𝐤𝐿𝐼, that he's the one that provides energy and spirit and soul, so-called, for the body. All right, this is Shiva again right here, this image, all right, which is a Hindu god, and she has dreads, she has dreads, and this is what them Hindus believe in, this is what they believe in, look like an Egyptian, and the Egyptians was big on that too, because I pulled up an image where, the prince's lock that they used to wear back in ancient Egypt was actual dreadlock, all right, it wasn't braids, all right. Now, here you go. This is like a Indian or one of these Hindus, and this is what they believe. This goes back to Shiva, and they believe that they're storing energy in their head, in their pineal gland, all right, because of their dreadlocks not allowing it to escape, and that's vanity, all right. That's the definition of vanity, all right. Let me see. There's another image I have. Oh yeah, this is it right here. I'm gonna read this, and I'm gonna get a scripture. All right, because this is going to lead up to the scripture I want to get. It says, didn't know this till now. Dreadlocks are more than just a symbolic statement of disregard for physical appearance. Both Eastern and Western traditions hold that bodily, mental, and spiritual energies mainly exit the body through the top of the head and the hair. If the hair is knotted, they believe the energy remains within the hair and the body, keeping a person more strong and healthy. All right, so this is why majority of people have dreads. All right, because besides the fashion statement that it's making now, because now it's just a fashion statement and people got it because it's a fashionable thing. Lil Wayne made it popular, and all these Southern rappers and all these other crap, they made it popular again. All right. It says an excellent example from the Western tradition is biblical Samson, whose unsurpassed strength was lost when Delilah cut off his 7 locks of hair. In classical India, all students, which right here is what I'm going to get into as well, all right, because a lot of these deities also try to, or these religions or beliefs try to date it back to Samson and his 7 locks, which Samson did not have dreadlocks, all right, and I'm going to prove that through the scriptures of the event that took place, that Samson didn't have so-called dreadlocks like you see in this image right here. Select your 1 minute. Let me just put this on silent. Okay. It says, all students on spiritual path were directly enjoined by their scriptures to develop dreadlocks as a means to detach themselves from physical vanity and to aid them in the development of bodily strength and supernatural mental and spiritual powers, which Samson had his powers because of the vow he kept, all right? And he broke his vow when his hair was cut. And let me get that. This is the book of Judges, chapter 16, verse 13. And Delilah said unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, now, if we know the story about Samson and Delilah, Samson was known for his strength. He was a Nazarite. He kept the vow of the Nazarite, meaning he didn't drink wine. He didn't shave. He kept all his hair. He didn't drink of the grape of the vine. And he was holy unto the Most High. All right. Now his hair, or him keeping the symbols of the vow, was basically like exactly that symbol. So his hair was a symbol. All right. It says, and he said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with the web. All right. Now this right here, when you look into it, is going to show you that Samson didn't have 7 locks or 7 dreadlocks. All right. What Samson had was seven braids. All right. Now Samson kept 7 braids, which, if you think about it, Samson, had hair from the time he was born till he was a grown man, and that's a lot of hair. So the easiest way to manage that is to keep it braided, all right, or to keep it in 7 locks. All right. Now let's look up the Hebrew words for some of these words I'm going to show you. It says, and Delilah said unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, right? He said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with the web. Now let's look at some of these words. Let's look at weavest. Let's look at weave first, all right? Now when you look up weave, all right, weave means to weave cloth, to braid, all right, all right, weaver, and true. Now we're looking at braid. Weave means to braid. Now Samson already has 7 locks, all right. He already has 7 locks. Now he's telling Delilah, if you weave these 7 locks, all right, you're gonna lose. I'm gonna lose my strength. Now when you weave something, this is what it means to weave, all right. All right, when you weave, let's read it again. If thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with the web. All right, now if you weave it with the web, what's the web? The web is a loom. All right, a web of unfinished stuff on a loom. Okay, now we're gonna look at a loom. All right, a loom is it says apparatus for making fabric by weaving yarn or thread. All right, that's what a loom is. Now let's look at ancient looms. All right, these are ancient looms. These are the looms Samson was referring to. All right, this is the web. The web that Samson was referring to was a loom, and this is a loom that's used to weave. All right, now let's just take a good look at the images. All right, because I'm going to show more things to prove to you that Samson didn't have 7 dreadlocks. All right, because you cannot loom or weave 7 dreadlocks in such device like this. All right, these are used for putting together very small, thin, threads of fabric. All right, that's why Samson made reference to it, with his hair. All right, because Samson still had hair on his head as far as non-dreadlocks. All right, if he unlocked the 7 braids that he had in his head, he would have hair. All right, just like how you get cornrows and this and that. When you take your cornrows out, you got hair all over the place. Well, that's what Samson had. All right, and Samson was telling was making mockery off of, with Delilah, telling her, if you weave my hair, all right, weave all these little hairs on my head, then I'm gonna lose my strength. But he was joking with her. He was messing around. All right, he was messing with her, man. All right, so these are looms. All right, these are looms. Now, all right, the web. All right, web of unfinished stuff on the loom. All right, web and the loom. That's what it's talking about when Samson said what he said. All right, let me read it one more time. And I'm gonna show a quick video. All right. All right, now the internet is acting a little slow. Let me see. Okay, it says, he said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks. Now, you can't weave 7 locks like I said. All right, because if you have 7 dreadlocks, which let me see if I got some of these pictures. All right, let's look at some of these right here. These are men with dreadlocks. All right, they would depict Samson to have this on his head. All right, have Bob Marley dreads on his head. All right, they would depict. You can't put that. You cannot pass this through a loom. All right, you can't pass this through a web. It's impossible. All right, why would Samson make that statement if he had 7 dreadlocks? That doesn't make any sense. All right, Samson didn't have 7 dreadlocks on his head. You know, Samson didn't have this on his head. He didn't have. Back in the islands, you know, they call him bungle nati. All right, bungle nati or bungle dreads or bungle man. You know, guys like this, you call that bungle dreads. You know, matter of fact, there was a group. You know, a reggae group. I forget the name of them. I forget their name, but they had one guy with a big ass dread just going straight up like a coconut tree. You know, that's what you call a bungle dread. You can't pass something like that through a loom. You know, I forget the name of the group. Apostle Barge, made mention of it. Matter of fact, let me see. Let me see. Oh yeah, steel post. All right, here you go. Let me see, steel post. This guy right here. Let's see if we get a bigger image. All right, these guys right here. This guy, here you go. See, this is what they're trying to say Samson had. Samson ain't have nothing like this, man. All right, all that hair Samson would have had from the time of his birth up, it would have been like 10 times longer than this guy's hair. All right, and imagine 7 of these hanging from the top of your head. It just doesn't. It is not right. It doesn't look right. It doesn't sound right, and it's not right. All right, so Samson wasn't making reference to anything like this. Okay. So now let's look at let me see. That was loom. This is what a loom looked like. This is what they used to weave. All right, he was telling Delilah to use this on his head or to use a smaller version on his head. All right. This is the shuttle for the loom, or this is a shuttle for the pin, because let me see. When you read the next verse, it says Judges 16:14, and she fastened it with the pin, and said unto him, excuse me, Slakio. It says, and she fastened it with the pin, and said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he awaked out of sleep and went away with the pin of the beam and with the web. So what she did was, after Samson fell asleep, and what she do? She weaved his hair. All right, she weaved his hair. She took out them 7 locks and weaved it. So now Samson went from having 7 locks to smaller braids, as you can say, all right, or smaller hairs, and weave together, all right, because you cannot weave 7 actual, even if he had 7 braids, you can't weave that. You can't use that with a weave, because when you read this, it shows you that she actually used the images that I showed you of the loom and which was referred to as the web and etc. Because it says, and she fastened it with the pin and said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. So after she was done weaving it and fastened it with the pin, all right, because after you finish weaving something, you fasten it. You use a pin to hold it together, all right. And she said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee. So Samson jumped up out of sleep. And he awaked out of sleep, and he went away with the pin of the beam and with the web. So Samson just got up out of bed and went straight towards the Philistines with the stings that Delilah was using still intact on his head. All right, now let's look at let's look at where it says the pin, all right? You know, we just looking into some Hebrew words to show you that Samson didn't have no dreadlocks, because you got a lot of, you know, even you got camps out there in Israel with long ass dreads thinking that they being Samson, you know. So a pin is exactly that pin, you know, nail pin used for weaving, all right. So a pin used for weaving. Now when you go back, we're gonna look at the beam. All right, the pin is used for weaving. Now the beam is talking about the loom, a loom shuttle. All right, loom shuttle. Remember those words, loom and shuttle. Now this right here is a loom, a shuttle. This is the shuttle for the loom. All right, this thing right here, this thing that you see right here, that's the shuttle for the loom. This. All right, and this is the yarn. This is the thread. You know, so this is the images. Now, matter of fact, this brings a scripture to mind. I'm gonna show a video first. Hey, Salaki, about the audios, Akim, you know, pretty much what happened was I did this video this morning, and as soon as I uploaded it to YouTube, it was banned for copyright infringement. Basically, this lady that I'm using as an example, all right, this lady right here, she pretty much, you know, banned it because I used her video and her audio. That's why you see the copyright disclaimer down there. And you also see I have her, the YouTube section with a video minimized, all right? So this is for educational purpose uses only and none other than that. But anyway, as I was saying, you know, she's going to show an example on, you know, an ancient world style or the old style of weaving using the shuttle that I was mentioning, all right? And, you know, you're going to see her, well, that's what she had right there on the table. And that device right there that she's about to pick up, that's the shuttle, all right? And that's what you use to put the thread in, etc., etc. And again, this is all just an image, you know, to give you an idea that Samson couldn't have had 7 large dreadlocks, you know, and use the idea of this concept, you know, as far as trying to mock Delilah or mocking Delilah, right? It just can't, it don't go hand in hand with each other. Dreadlocks and this machine right here are not compatible with each other. All right, this is a weaving machine, and you're gonna see how she uses the device. All right, so I'm just gonna do a little quick talk over, you know, on it. But you see, you know, she's just basically explaining it, you know, and that right there is what's used in her hand to send the weaver's loom, the weaver's shuttle back and forth to actually cause the threading to go, you know, to weave into each other. All right, it's gonna go back and forth as you're gonna see her use the machine. What she just did was she shot the shuttle to the other side of the fabric, all right, or to the other side of the weaving cloth that she's making, all right, and she's gonna shoot it back to the left. You know, so Samson pretty much has so much hair that, you know, he was telling Delilah, or Delilah had to use something of this type of, you know, sort to actually weave his hair together. All right, whereas we looked up in the etymologies of the word, the Hebrew words, you know, this is the type of mechanism that was being used when he was sleeping, and then he woke up out of sleep and ran towards the Philistine when Delilah tried to say the Philistines are there, and he just jumped up out of bed. See, she's shooting it back and forth. All right, this is just to give an idea that this couldn't have been dreadlocks. All right. All right, so that gave you an example, right, of how, you know, Delilah was weaving his hair. All right, now I don't know if they was using this exact same device or mechanism, but the same concept still applies. And keep in mind, you cannot do that with 7 dreadlocks on your head. All right, you can't do that with the dreadlocks like the guy from Steel Post got on his head, man. All right, you can't do that with this. How you gonna pass that through a weave, man? That's impossible. You trying to break the loom? You trying to break the weaving machine? You know, you can't do it. Now, when I seen that video, this scripture came to mind. All right, this is Job 7:6. This don't have anything to do with the hair or anything, but this scripture came to mind. It says, "My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and are spent without hope." Let me read that again. This is Job, right? "My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and are spent without hope." Now, Job is saying that his days, his life, all right, is swifter, it's faster, it's going faster than a weaver's shuttle. Now, what was a weaver's shuttle again? This thing right here, that thing that the woman put in this little box, and then it was flying back and forth. That was the weaver's shuttle. Let me play it again so you see how swift a weaver's shuttle can go. You see that? That's how swift that's what Job is saying. All right, Job is saying his days are swifter than that, man. And that's how you weave fast. That's how, you know, it was done. And this is an old mechanism. Now Esau uses actual machinery to do certain things. All right, but this is how it was done, you know. And that's how Delilah did Samson's hair when he was sleeping, you know, straight up. Because check it out again. Loom shuttle. All right, we just seen a loom shuttle, and Job said his days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle. All right, which is the weaver's shuttle is the loom shuttle. All right, and are spent without hope. Okay, so I got a lot of tabs up here, so like it, brothers. So let's go back to the word where we got shuttle from, or loom, and it was the beam. All right, the beam. That's where we got the word loom and shuttle from. So let's read that again. It says, Samson, and he awake out of his sleep and went away with the pin of the beam and with the web. So everything was still in his head. It was still in his head. So Samson was getting his hair weaved by Delilah. All right, you can't weave dreadlocks. You can't do that. It can't happen. All right, and it says, and with the web. Now same thing, web, a web of unfurnished stuff on a loom. All right, so goes back to the same mechanism, the loom mechanism. All right, the machinery. All right, the device or contracting. Okay. Now I covered the point, but there's a few more things I want to bring out, and then I'm gonna end it. Let me see. Now another thing with dreads, right? Another thing with dreadlocks. You know, I'm gonna bring the scripture out, and I'm gonna, mention another thing with dreadlocks, and I'm gonna end it. It says, this is 1 Corinthians 11:14. Doth not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him? That's absolutely right, and that is what the brother mentioned in his question. You know, let's read it again. Quick random question that's been dwelling on my spirit. I have dreads, but never let them get long, because I don't believe men should have long hair. Well, the scriptures say that 1 Corinthians 11:14. Should I cut them off altogether, or just remain to keep them short? If there's any elders out there in GMS that have any info with the water, but anyway, he acknowledged the fact that men shouldn't have long hair, but altogether dreads are, unsanitary. It's not even clean, because let me explain why. All right, let me read this real quick, and I'm gonna explain why based off my experience. It says, hair must be dirty to be the dread. Fact. If you do not wash your hair, it will stink. Dreadlock hair needs to be washed regularly, just like undreaded hair. You can wash dreads as you would wash a sponge. Now, no matter how much you wash a sponge, you'll never be clean. Like, look at this image right here. Can you really wash this and clean that? You cannot, because what happens is, really, you're just cleaning the surface of the dreadlocks. All right, and if you want to talk about not being vain or vanity, think about how much hours or how long you have to spend in the shower soaping your dreads. All right, and then rinsing it out, squeezing it out, soaping it again, rinsing it out, squeezing it out, just to get all the dirt and all the filth out of it. All right, that's vain, that's vanity. All right, and no matter how much you do that, dreads, dirt is still going to be trapped in there. And secondly, with dreadlocks, all right, dreadlocks is basically dead hair. All right, it's dead hair, and it's exactly that. It's dead hair. All right, because hair sheds. All right, hair is supposed to shed periodically. And this is, I pulled up an article on that too. Let me just read this real quick. It says, telogen is the resting phase and usually accounts for 6% to 8% of all hairs. This phase lasts about 100 days for hairs on the scalp and for longer hairs on the eyebrow, eyelash, arm, and leg. During this phase, the hair follicle is completely at rest and the club hair is completely formed. Pulling out a hair at this phase will reveal a solid, hard, dry, white material at the root. It says about 25 to 100 telogen hairs are shed normally each day. Now, it sheds from the root, all right? Your hair sheds from the root. Now, if your hair is in a dreadlock, okay, if your hair is in a dreadlock and it sheds, guess what? It's going to be stuck in that lock. All right, think about it. You got dreadlocks and then everything is in one giant lock. Now, if these hairs start to shed, which happens naturally, the shedded hair never really shed and go anywhere. It stays stuck in the dreadlocks. So what happens is as it grow, you know, regardless of how long your hair is or how short it is, you're still harboring dead hairs on your head. You're not giving it time to you're not giving it the opportunity to actually shed. You know, so now with Samson wasn't walking around with 100 pounds of dead hair in his head. All right, he had braids, 7 locks, which if you think about it, is convenient to have. You know, it's not too much braids, it's not too less braids, etc., etc. And I'm just speculating, really. You know what I'm saying? But it's convenient because now Samson could take his hair out. You know, have someone take his hair out, whatever, and then comb it out and then braid it again. All right, Samson didn't walk around with just his hair out. You know, no braids, no nothing, because eventually what will happen, it will tangle up and turn into dreadlocks, and then it will become a disaster. All right, it will become dreadlocks, and you can't clean it. You have to, you know, get rid of it to clean it, you know, so to speak. All right, so hair have to shed. Now, people that walk around with dreadlocks, the majority of the hair on their head is dead hair. All right, because the dead hair, like I said, it's shedding, but it's not dropping anywhere because it's stuck inside that dreadlock. All right, so dead hair dreadlocks is nothing but dead hair. All right, it's unsanitary. All right, it's not supposed to be like that. And I'm gonna give another testimony, and then I'm gonna end it. All right, because when I had dreads, you know, we're talking about when I was 16, you know, and I got rid of it. I didn't take a scissor and just cut it all off. All right, I didn't cut it all off. What I did was I started from the very tip of the dread, and then I took a comb, a hard comb, and I started just, you know, picking it out, which that took a long time. Now, through the midst of picking all this out, I acquired so much hair that all this hair, you know, fit in a shopping bag, man. All right, and that was dead hair. That was never the hair that was on my head, you know, that was part of, you know, healthy hair, so to speak. That was dead hair from the time I was 1 year old, 5 years old, 7, 8, 9, 10, that just got stuck in one giant, you know, womb or cocoon of hair. All right, so, hey, you know, hopefully, you know, I mean, I ain't got anything more else to say, you know. So I guess when I picked it out, all right, what happened was my regular hair, my living hair was what was left. And if you look at early videos when I came into the camp, you know, that's like I said, this was back in 2016. I cut my hair. In 2008, I came into the camp with braids on my head, and that was through the Spirit of the Lord. And the braids were still long, but then a year after is when I totally just went low, you know. So 2009, I didn't have, you know, no more braids or whatever, which is nothing wrong with having braids. You can have braids on your head, but you gotta pull your lock, like the scriptures tell you. And I think it's Ezekiel, if I'm not mistaken, you gotta pull it, which means to cut it. If it gets too long, you just gotta cut it. All right, but I'm gonna end it on that, man. I felt as though I spoke too much, but I hope, you know, this was an edifying lesson to the brother, you know, to the brother right here. You know, hope for the elect of the 12 tribes. I hope it was edifying and give you an insight, you know, because dreads are really vain. All right, they're vanity, and it's nothing but dead hair in your head. And nowadays, it's a fashion statement. All right, but I hope it was edifying to that brother and any other brother that might watch, you know. And you know, anyway, till next time, I say shalom. All praise, honor, and glory to 𝐻𝐿𝐴 𝐻𝐿𝐴. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and say shalom. All right, to the elect, shalom.